Hey everybody, this is Zach from SubItUp, and in this video we're going to go over how to configure a position and the rules for when people can clock in and clock out for that position within SubItUp. This step, if you are setting up a new position that needs to use the time clock, is a must. This must be set up prior to the time clock being able to work with this position. So first, to find this page, you're going to go over on this left side menu here, go under Time Clock, hover over Configuration, and choose Position Configuration. That's going to take you to this page here. And over on the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see a list of all the positions that you are a manager of that you have time clock permissions for. In this list, if you're looking for a certain position, you can search for it here, or you can just highlight it. So in this one, I'm going to use my search bar and choose Front Desk. So that is something that, that you can search for if you need to. And after you choose the position that you need, you're going to see a couple of different options and settings pop up here. We're going to go over each of these and how they will impact the position and how they can clock in. So first, at the very top here, where it says General Settings, the first thing that you're going to see here is Early Clock In. This is how many minutes before a shift starts are people able to clock in. So if the shift starts at 5 p.m., how many minutes early would you let staff clock in? Now, if you have a very wide range here, you're in a position that would let them clock in many hours or at any point before a shift starts, you can make this just a really big number if you want, like 300 minutes, which would basically be a couple hours. Or you can have it be very strict. Like we see a lot of people do 5 minutes or 7 minutes, because if somebody clocks in more than 7 minutes early, some payroll systems will round and give them an extra 15 minutes. So 5 or 7 tends to be what we typically see here for early clock in as far as when employees can clock in before a shift starts. Now, late clocking in tends to be a little bit different. For late clock in here, what this basically means is how many minutes after a shift starts would I cut people off from being able to clock in? But we work with lots of people who end up actually saying, even if they're more than this many minutes late, I still want them to clock in, but I want to know if they're that late, right? So what we see a lot of people do here is put in, let's say 10 minutes. I'm just going to put in a number here. And they actually check this next checkbox, which says allow employee to clock in after this time. And there's even some other options here, like this bottom one that says notify managers and the employee if the employee has not clocked in past this time window. So if they have a 3 o'clock shift, if they have not clocked in by 3:10, managers and the employee are going to get notified. The managers will get a notification that says your employee hasn't clocked in yet. Employee is going to get a notification that says you haven't clocked in yet. And if you, once they do clock in after this time frame, if you want an additional notification that lets you know, hey, this employee did clock in this more late than this, you can check this box as well, and managers will get an additional notification once that employee actually does clock in. So a lot of people set it up like this. If you're somebody where you don't want those notifications and you do want it to be a hard and fast line, they can't clock in more than 30 minutes late, you would just not check these boxes and have it set to whatever number you want here. Clocking out, same principles. So at the end of a shift, if the shift is scheduled to end at 8 p.m., how many minutes early would you let them clock out? If you are in a position that has very strict timing on your shifts, and if they're scheduled till 8 o'clock, they can't leave until within 10 or 5 minutes of that shift, you'll put that number in here and don't check any boxes. However, if you are a lot more flexible with when people clock out, you can put in a number here and check this box, which will let them clock out earlier than this number. And you can also check the bottom one here, which will notify the manager if they do clock out earlier than this. So you can have it set as a number that it's okay, a window for them to clock out at, but then if they clock out earlier than that, it'll let them, but you're notified. The last one on this list on the boxes is late clock out. So this is the same principles, but at the end of a shift, how many minutes late would they need to be before they're not able to clock out anymore? So some people have big numbers here. They'll put like 60 minutes. Some people will have the same principles as late clock in, but they will have it for late clock out. Like they will have it as a maybe 15-minute number, but they'll check this box, which lets people clock out later, but will also be notified if it's supposed to end at 8 o'clock. In this scenario, it hits 8:15 p.m. Employees are notified, managers are notified that employee has not clocked out yet. And you can even have the same as over here in the late clock in, that third checkbox right here in the middle. You could check this. That will let you know when they actually do clock out. Now, for all of these settings here, there's a text box which will let you have a message in here for somebody trying to clock in too early or too late or whatever the scenario is. For instance, if I want anybody who is going to be 10 minutes late trying to clock in, I might put a custom message here that says, "You are late. Please go see your manager." Something like that, right? And they will see that if they are attempting to clock in more than 10 minutes late, okay? So these are all custom messages that you guys can have. Down here towards the bottom, a couple other settings for you. The first one is allow employees to clock in during times they are not scheduled. This is what we commonly call unscheduled time. For this position, this is typically something we only see if the staff really are flexible about when they come in. Do you have some staff that are maybe some office workers who can drop by between classes, even if they're not on the schedule, and put in a couple hours of work, right? If that's the case, you want to go ahead and let them clock in whenever they want. The majority of the positions that we see folks set up do not have this turned on because they are on a schedule. Maybe they work a front desk, something like that, and they only want them to clock in during these times within these windows that they've set. The bottom one here is allow employees to leave notes when they clock in. Most people do have this on. When they clock in or clock out, they will have a box there that lets them actually go and put in a note for you, and you'll be able to see that in any report that you run. The next option here is manager override. Manager override is basically if you set limits here, maybe with some hard limits where they're not able to clock out earlier than this, something like that. Would you want to have a override pin that they're going to be able to type in? So you have to activate this, put in some sort of override number, and they can type that number in. And if they do type that number in, it will let them clock in for whenever. So it really overrides the system and will let them go ahead and put in any time that they want to clock in. Even if it's 4 o'clock, they could say they were there at 3:45. This also, when it is used, it does message managers. It does email managers, letting them know that the time clock override was used. However, most people are able to control when people can clock in using these boxes and notifications up at the top, and usually don't have this on. Manager communication list. So we've talked a lot about notifications, managers notified. This is for this position, which managers can be notified, right? So I can set myself, I can set a couple others if I want. That's what this list is. And what notification type should people receive? Should they receive an email? Or should it be a push notification? Now, keep in mind, if you choose push notification, this will only work if that manager has the app downloaded and is logged into it. Okay, if those two things are not true, then no notification will go out at all. So it's really up to the managers here if they want to receive emails or push notifications. Lastly, if you're setting this up for the first time and you want these, whatever settings you have set up here, you want them to apply to all the positions that you manage. Let's say you manage 50 positions and you want them all to be the same. You can now check this box. And if I have this box checked up here, when I go down, and there's going to be another little configuration like, hey, are you sure you want to override all the other configurations? Yes, I do. When I hit save, this will actually mass change every single position here and make them match what we have listed for this position. So this is just an easier way for people to update these in mass and update them for everybody if you want them all to be the same. If you don't, you can always just click and load different positions and you'll be able to go from there. If you do see this little bar at the top that says your time clock has not been configured for this position, that just means that your position will not be able to be clocked into until you set this up. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you see that, you definitely need to set up this page before you can move on with setting up the rest of your time clocks. That is how to configure different positions. As always, if you have any questions at all, please reach out to us. You can give us a call at 617-401-8733 or email us at support@subitup.com. We are open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks so much.